First of all, talk to us about what we're expecting with these new products.
Like you said, it's going to be a big upgrade for the iPhone. This is going to be the first time where they're coming out with 3 all-new models. So right now they have the iPhone 7 and iPhone 7 Plus. They're going to upgrade those with faster processors and some other new bells and whistles. But the main entree is going to be this overhauled iPhone that's called the iPhone 8. It's going to have a stainless steel frame, curved glass, and the new part here is that the phone has very slim bezels, sort of like the Samsung S8 on all sides. So they'll be able to pack in a slightly larger screen, but into an overall sized phone that's about the same size as the smaller iPhone 7.
So we're looking at new bells and whistles, as Mark calls it. Shira, talk to us about how this affects the supply chain. We were just saying how perhaps it looks like the Galaxy S8, and potentially Samsung might be benefiting in some ways from the supply chain here.
Yeah, this is a really interesting moment in the friend and enemy relationship between Apple and Samsung. These two companies, they obviously fiercely compete in the high-end smartphone market with Samsung's own line of phones versus the iPhone. But Samsung is also a very important supplier to Apple, that it makes things like computer chips and screens and memory. And over the years, Apple has tried to reduce its reliance on buying parts from Samsung, but it doesn't always work. And in the case of the fancy new screen on the new iPhone, as Mark reported, right, Apple is going to need to rely on Samsung to supply these displays. It's a little bit of an awkward dependence for Apple.
Frenemy continues, and Mark, the actual specifications is going to be so high-end that potentially we're not going to be able to get our mitts on these particular phones in quite the same pace as we're used to.
Right, and to Shira's point, this new phone will use that OLED display. It shows colors a little bit better. The Samsung phones have had it for quite some time, but they're very supply constrained. Right now, and we reported on this about 6 months ago with our colleagues in Asia, the phone's OLED displays are in high demand, and only Samsung Display, Samsung's component arm, is able to produce these right now. In the future, LG, Sharp, Japan Display will get to it. But right now, it's only Samsung. And to Shira's point, that makes Apple reliant on an arm of Samsung's bigger business, but also it keeps constraints high for the time being.
And Shira, it comes in an interesting time when we've seen actually a lot of pressure being put on suppliers of Apple, whether it be particularly in the chips area. I'm thinking of Imagination Technology in the United Kingdom. Do suppliers have something to concern with Apple, because they can be made or broken by this juggernaut?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It is a little bit ironic that we're used to these kind of smaller companies falling victim to pressures from Apple. You know, one case several years ago when there was a graphite supplier that went bankrupt after it was kind of tying its entire business to getting business from the iPhone. And now we've seen the tables turn a little bit, right, where you have Apple reliant on a company like Samsung that is just as powerful as Apple is.
And just talk to us, Mark, about how important this particular launch is, because it's a decade old, but we've also got such pressure coming from Samsung because it really rose the bar. We saw you playing with the S8 and you liked it. It's a good quality piece of equipment.
Right, we're at an inflection point, so it's important for a couple of reasons. First, we're at a point where people are looking for what goes beyond the smartphone. Apple still has to show the smartphone is the cream of the crop, the king of the consumer devices industry. To your other point, the Samsung S8, it's a high-end phone. It looks great, and they're getting to these new features, the OLED display, the higher-end cameras, the thinner bezels, the glass, 6 months before Apple will have its launch in the fall. So it comes at an important time, especially even after Apple retained the same overall form factor for 3 years in a row with the 6, 6S, and 7. So we'll see. As Gene Munster told me for our story, Apple's set up to hit a home run, so they better come through, and I think they will.